Yo, what's up? This is Brian Bell with Conscious Fitness. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm taking you behind the scenes into a client live training I recently did. And inside this training, you're going to learn really how to hit your calorie and protein goals if you're having some trouble. So, we went over two really solid strategies, one focusing on creating that sample perfect day of eating, and the second one being on how to adjust our portion sizes. So, there's a lot of info, there's a lot of takeaways inside this video. So sit back, enjoy it, and if you find anything very helpful, drop it in the comments below. But without further ado, enjoy the video. Okay, so the number one thing I want to talk about today is going to be your sample perfect diet. Okay, so this is, I briefly touched on this before, but the idea is we've been tracking food, we've been logging, and we've got some really good examples when we look back in our food diary and our food journal to see, wow, this was a day that I actually hit my calories, my protein perfectly. Everything synced up. It was a perfect day. And then when we look at those foods, we'll most likely see, okay, we probably cooked at home. We had it planned, prepared. We had the protein right. That means we had high protein with every meal. We look and we notice that the fiber was high, so we know we're eating whole foods. And so, what we want to do, first of all, we know that not every day is going to be perfect like that. But what can happen is that, throughout different changes from one day of the week to the next, to 1 month to the next, our vibes might change up a little bit. We might change some things around without even realizing it. So, first, if we can look back and let's just say the calorie goal was 2,000 calories. Let's find a day where you hit the 2,000 calories, you hit your protein goal perfectly. And let's recognize that that is really the baseline that we can acknowledge is the range that we want to be at if we are focused on hitting our goals that day. So, if we look at every single day of our journey here being either keeping us where we are, maintenance, which there's no problem with that if you want to maintain. Maintaining is a really good thing. But if you have the desire to lose more body fat, for example, lose more weight, then we know we need a calorie deficit day. If we want to gain more weight, then we know we need at least maintenance or a slightly surplus calorie day, right? So that means that every day is its own essential battle. Are we going to do it right or are we going to do it wrong? Right? I mean, it does come down to that because if the goal is to lose weight and we're eating at maintenance or slightly above, then we're not going to see the results that we want, right? So we need to understand where is that line in the sand. This idea of going back and looking at your own logs and knowing, well, which day did I eat perfectly will allow you to understand where that line in the sand is. So you could replicate everything you did that day. Doesn't mean it's always going to work out perfectly, but now you're going to understand, okay, yeah, this is what that perfect day of eating looks like. So much so that you can really replicate it over and over and over if you're okay with not needing crazy variety, all the time, having eating the same stuff for like a week is not going to be a problem at all. You can slowly add in more veggies and things like that to create diversity. But to get going, if you need to really restart where you're at and make sure that what you're doing is working, then just repeat that menu over and over. And then guess what? When you do that, you'll understand some of the other fluctuations that might come. So some days you might be like 100% perfect on there, right? I hit the 2,000 calories, no problem. But on the other side of things, you might recognize, well, you might have one day where it's like impossible. So you ended up feeling like you had to eat 2,400, 2,500 calories. Well, what changed on that day? If we keep the diet the same for a period of time, it's going to help us see some of the other variables and changes. So from speaking from my experience, a lot of that will be if I'm out of the house. If I'm out of the house and we're driving by somewhere, there's going to be a chance that I might grab something that's not normally on my plan, right? Whether it's a snack or whether it's an actual meal. Chances are it's going to be a snack. because I'm not eating a lot of meals out unless we're going out to like dinner, right? Which is still a couple times a month. So the idea is if I have that sample perfect plan, a perfect diet, then I could just repeat that over and over. So guess what? If the morning is oatmeal or the morning is an acai bowl or a tofu scramble, that's my morning. So if I'm in a situation where I can't have that, say I'm at a friend's house, say I'm traveling, then I know at least that's my benchmark. Okay, I normally get a meal and breakfast that's like 400 calories and it's got a good amount of protein in it because it's got tofu or it's got, the protein powder added or whatever. So that should create that frame of reference to say, well, I need to be able to reproduce this the best I can. So whichever restaurants are around you, if you're out of town, or what other food options you have if you're not at home, you got to do the best you can because now you understand where that frame of reference is. So the sample perfect diet creates a reference you can always replicate or draw from. So we should all know what that perfect day looks like. 100%. So let's see. Take a look at chat. Yeah, when I'm not near home, that's when I tend to mess up. Yep, it's tough. It's tough. So what we'll get into is probably in part two of this, the deeper strategy that will help there. That would be great. But yeah, that's usually the case. When we're not at home, we're in a new situation. We might drive by a store. We might ride by a Starbucks, right? You might, stop at the convenience store to get gas, and then you walk and use the bathroom, and then you see, oh, well, there's like a protein bar. Like those types of things that happen. Even with good intentions, that extra few hundred calories can put you above where you're normally at. But guess what? Even if you do take that choice, if you understand your sample perfect diet, that meal plan that's already created out from that day where you hit everything well, you'll see, well, if I just had that protein bar that was 250 calories, I need to do something different to that normal day. So it's a great way to have a very physical, a very visual reference of what your calorie and protein goals look like beyond just the numbers, right? We want to be able to see if the goal is 2,000 calories. This looks like three meals, and that's what these three meals look like. And these are the snacks associated with them that go together. So that guess what? If you need to replace a lunch or if you need to replace a dinner, you're going to closely mimic that sample perfect day. That's what has helped me so much because really I reproduce this same day as much as I can in totality to just keep it. So it makes a lot of sense. What's up, Cheryl? Thanks for coming in. I'll go ahead and kind of jump in and kind of repeat what I've shared so far because there's like really 2 points I'm sharing tonight. And I have touched on this before, but I like I've implemented a lot more now, and I think it's just a great thing to always kind of keep in mind. But I was talking about a sample perfect diet, right? Going back into your food logs, looking for a day where you hit your calories, you hit your protein, and you did it super well, and everything looked perfect. And you can repeat that over and over and over, then you realize you'll hit success. So what we want to do is look at that one day, whether it's one day or a couple days worth of logs, and just recognize that now we have a visual and a physical representation of what those calories and those protein goals look like. So instead of just saying 2,000 calories and 120 grams of protein, what does that actually look like with our food in the meals and the snacks that we choose together? And so when we know this, then we can compare all the other choices if we have an off day, for example. So if we are traveling, if we are out of the house, we realize, okay, for dinner, I normally have um a meal that's got 400 calories and 25 grams of protein. So now the goal is to mimic that the best you can, whether you're not at home or in a new situation. How do you find, okay, this is the reference, 400 calories, 25 grams of protein. I normally have a higher protein food. Normally got some good carb source that has protein as well. And I've got some greens in there. That's a perfect example. But the cool thing is we can just replay this same day over and over and over and just eat a lot of the same things if we're having trouble with consistency or if we need to just dial things in, create some consistency, just drop all the decisions that we need to make. Doesn't mean you have to eat the same thing for the rest of your life or for 3 months or 6 months on end. But if you just say, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to prep all these foods, I'm going to eat the same stuff for a week straight because I know it hits my numbers, it will also expose some of those other disruptions of where we might tend to slip, which could be, oh, when I am out of the house, I end up half the time I stop at this store and maybe I get like a fancy drink, or maybe I get a snack or an energy bar or protein bar. And then that kind of adds to what I'm doing that day versus replaces something. So that's really huge of just knowing, yes, I might have a calorie goal of 1,500 calories or 2,000 calories, but what does that really look like when it comes down to all the food choices? That's why we want to go back to our previous logs that we've already recorded. We already have the proof that it's doable for us, and we just have to replicate those things. And so find the weakest link and use that sample day to show you exactly where the weak points are so that we can then more regularly hit the goals, whether that's keeping calories low if you're trying to lose weight, or if you're trying to keep calories higher if you're trying to restore your metabolism and focus on building more lean muscle. So the next piece of this is going to be looking at meals. Actually, let's say looking at components of meals. So to kind of explain where I'm going with this, I would like to share a story of something I did last night, which is it's a money saver and it's saving me calories, right? So this is what I did. I was going through just general expenses. And then I was like, what would be cool is to look at my food expenses. How much does it cost to have my sample perfect diet, right? So I took my snapshot of my day where I normally will have, a lot of my food is the same. And like I usually tell you guys, if I'm going to switch it up, I might have like, I might use a wrap here or there, or I might, change the protein source, or, I might just, I might switch out an entire lunch here or there. But generally, when I go out to eat once every couple weeks is when I experience some more variety. But I like the idea of eating a lot of the same things I really, really, really enjoy a lot. And then, switching up the little smaller things around those for more micronutrients. So what I did, I was like, okay, I know that I eat, I have my tofu and hummus as a snack. I know I eat an acai bowl pretty much every day. I know I have a protein shake. I know for my breakfast, lunch, it's a big bowl of like tempeh, sweet potatoes, black beans, and spinach and onions and peppers. And, I know what snacks that I alternate through, whether it's, PB Fit and apples, which I've been on lately a lot, a little dark chocolate. So I figured out the cost of everything. And then what's kind of funny about this is that I was looking at the cost because I was like, well, this would be good to know how much I'm really spending on food. But then it ended up becoming something about calories too, right? So, okay, do I need this food in there? Or do I need this certain portion? Do I need it bigger? Do I need it smaller? Is there anything I can play around with where maybe it doesn't feel any different, but maybe it's saving me money in calories? And that's what happens. So my acai bowls tend to be the most expensive meal for myself because I'm doing all the fruit, the acai powder, there's protein powder that goes into it, a lot of the blueberries. So it tends to be the most expensive thing I make. Whereas the tempeh meal I make is like a $3 meal. And I'm like, wow, this is great. The acai bowl can be, $8. And I'm like, that's a lot for something at home. So I thought about it and I was like, I reflected on the ingredients that I use and the choices that I'm making. And I realized this time where I made it and I didn't even use acai powder at all. I just had blueberries and the fruit with it. I was like, you know what? Instead of 3 scoops of acai powder, I could probably just do one, you know? So I tried that. And I was like, what about reducing the blueberries from a full cup in the blended version to a half cup? I'm like, let's try that. And then the extra blueberries I use on top, maybe I'll switch those from a half cup to a third cup. So I made all these small little changes. And ultimately, I had that acai bowl last night. I didn't notice any difference at all, any difference at all. And it's saving probably close to $2 a day, which it, considering I eat like probably at least 300 of those a year, that's like $600 a year. That's just going to magically appear in my bank account. But guess what? This is what's crazy. 70 calories were saved from the acai bowl. So 70 times, if I multiply that by like 300 days, that's ultimately going to be 6 pounds worth of calories that are not going to be coming into my body. That it won't really make any difference to me because the meal itself still tastes the same. It looks like it's the same amount. It satiated me the same. Yeah, I used a little bit less of the seeds as well. I went from instead of 5 grams, I brought it down to 3 grams. And then I realized, like, well, this is this nice little hack. And the truth is, we can do this with all the different meals to a degree, right? Like sometimes I might use pumpkin seeds in my, lunches. How much am I using, right? Does it make sense for the amount of calories I'm trying to get? Maybe it does. This is also a way to do it in reverse if you're trying to add calories in. All we might want to do is just look at the portions and say, well, if I'm struggling to raise calories, what's one thing I can do in this meal that it's already here, but maybe I'll just have a little bit more of it and it doesn't throw me off too much. I can still eat it, but maybe you just ingested another 100 to 200 calories just by changing one thing. Like, for example, if you're using avocado on your meal, instead of using, a quarter of it, what if you switch to a half of the avocado? That's going to boost those calories up and get you closer to hitting that calorie goal. So the goal here is to look at all components of the meals, see what you can tweak in the direction you want to go in. And this is how we make small, subtle changes once we've already been doing this for a period of time. Because we're all probably getting used to like how to track food, probably the point where you're like, okay, I've done this enough. Like, right? You don't want to do it forever. Like, we don't have to do it every single day forever. And this is one of the steps to help us not have to do it forever is ultimately figuring out the calorie range we need to be in, whether that is up from where we are or whether that's lower from where we are. Right. And chances are sometimes we will swivel back and forth. You'll have days where you're lower than you need. That's common. And you have days where you're drastically higher. So one of the things we can do is just stabilize your diet as much as possible in step one. So we have that sample diet. And then step two is looking at components of the meal and seeing which individual ingredients you can tweak. So let's go into a couple ideas, right? So if we're looking for less calories, we're going to think about reducing portion sizes of, we can think major carb sources. So that would be like if you're using rice, sweet potatoes, things like that, pasta, of course. That could also be, let's put this down here. Oh, no, we don't need that. That's also going to be reducing major fat sources. So that's going to be nuts, avocado, let's see, nut butters, seeds, things like that. So the idea is we're not eliminating anything. We're not saying we can't have this anymore. We're just changing the portions. Because if you realize, okay, if you look at your diet, let's just say you're trying to keep calories low and you notice that, yeah, my goal is 2,000 calories, but I keep eating 2,500. Now we know there's a couple strategies there, right? We know if you're eating a lot more protein than you probably were, you're satiating yourself a little bit. It's helping you control those cravings. But what happens if you're eating all the protein in the world, but you're still tending to overeat? All right. Well, let's take a look at the things that you are overeating. And we realize we can do one of two things. We can either substitute them out completely, or we could change the portion and the amount of the same source, right? So, for example, like carb sources, I even say these are going to be more like starches here. Let's say major starchy carb sources. Let's kind of give you another angle here. And then there's also major sugar carb sources. And although I love fruit, part of it is, fruit. Um, I mean, ideally, that's really the only sugary carb source we have, but obviously, processed stuff would fall into here. Breads, they're going to be close to the sugar, unless you have a whole wheat bread. I guess I would pass for starch, but a lot of this stuff here is going to be more sugar based. So just generally looking again, you don't necessarily have to use like, completely switch. Oh, I'm not gonna have my tortilla or my wrap, and I'm gonna have to go to spinach wrap. But I think I know Milad, you had found these. A few of my other friends here found the beef free wraps, right? They have like 11 grams of protein in them for the same amount of calories. So that's the perfect idea of a food swap where you're switching from um say the healthier or say not the most healthy version of a food to the healthiest version. But then of course we have what we want to talk about today a little bit is just the changing the portions. And so we know we want to keep protein where it is. We want to keep protein in our diet as much as possible. So we know that if we're trying to reduce these calories, it's likely going to come from carbs or fats, right? Carbs and fats are great for us, right? But if we're trying to reduce calories, what we're trying to do is just take a look at the foods that we've already been eating, the meals that we're currently sticking with, and seeing if there's a way to turn them into like the next level of them. If we're already familiar with making them, if there is a way to not just save a couple bucks, right, which is a bonus, but to save those calories. Now, the opposite is also true if we're looking to add calories. So we're now looking at increasing portion sizes of this is great. So we can do actually protein, carbs, and or fat. Everything is fair game here. So having more protein, totally going to be fine here. You definitely don't want to take it away though. So the easiest thing to do is just increase the portion size. So with these, it could be more, let's say for protein, it's just larger serving of, whatever it is, tofu, tempeh, edamame, lentils, just a little bit more. It could just be 10 to 20% more. Same thing with carbs. I would say here what we would want to do is just focus on more starches, like those sweet potatoes, or if you like squash, I mean, even technically, I would be totally down with like gluten-free bread. That could totally fit within here as well. Um, but also we've got and fruit sugars. So this is where even juices could come in, right? So if you're trying to get more calories in, definitely liquid stuff. I know we've talked about that. But as far as carbs, just increasing the amount. Maybe you're making a meal. Maybe add, if you're making a bowl, maybe add a wrap to it. Maybe add some bread to it. That's where this would kind of come in handy because it might not take this whole new form and be this whole new amount of food to eat. But what we're looking at doing is just adding smaller things in, increasing the amount so it feels about the same. You're not struggling to get those calories in because chances are a lot of times we're struggling to get our calories in when we're trying to gain more weight or speed up our metabolism and get those calories in. Chances are we're eating less frequently than we need. So we have two options, right? Either we increase the frequency of when we're eating, which is kind of hard. But the number one strategy there is going to be starting the day off with breakfast. If you're not ready for a full meal, a protein smoothie is going to be your key. But the second piece of it is showing up to your meals that you're already making and increasing the portions that you're getting in that same meal. That's going to help you increase calories without increasing the amount of times you have to eat per day, which is still a good thing to do. Ideally, we're going to do both. So if we look at fats as well, the easiest thing to do here is more avocado slash guac. And we're focusing on avocado or guacamole because it is more of a whole food fat versus something like vegan mayo, right? Something like olive oil or oils. When we have more of a whole food, it's just healthier for our body, right? Doesn't mean you're gonna have a whole horrible bad thing happen if you're having, the other stuff. But our body recognizes it better, right? It understands what it is. It can assimilate it better. It probably is gonna digest a lot better. It's just overall better for you. It's not gonna mess your mood up as much. It's not gonna throw you off. So that's why we want to focus on like avocado. You could also do nut butters because when we think about a nut butter, you're just looking at it being semi-processed. You're not creating it from complete, seven different chemical processes in a lab, right? But you also have whole nuts and seeds as well. So I tend to like adding extra seeds on meals, right? We've also got coconut here, and that's probably, something we obviously want to share up here too. If you're using coconut oil on your food and you're trying to lose weight, stop using the coconut oil. But here's the thing. If you are trying to gain weight and you're not against oil, then that is a thing to do. I personally am not really about cooking oil. I'd say if you're going to have any oil at all, the only type you would want to ever have would be like an olive oil that's raw and that's not cooked. But even then, I don't think you're necessarily missing anything if you go oil free. But we have all these healthy fats in these real whole foods. So we can add the coconut flakes. That's my favorite way to eat coconut is just use the coconut flakes. And I get those healthy fats. And yeah, there's oil in there, but it's not extracted, super processed, refined oil. So between all of these, what we want to do, the homework would be to take a look across the last period of time where you were just on point with your food, your nutrition. That's what's so good about these nutrition logs is we have them in um, basically an access to just be able to go back and look and see like, okay, yeah, this was what I was doing. So if you kind of fall off the path a little bit, or you start eating out a little bit more, and it becomes a habit. It gets to show you, oh yeah, this was what I was making at home. I really liked that meal. Oh wow, the calories were really low. The protein was really high. Yeah, this was pretty easy. Let me go ahead and make this again. Right? It helps us see that. Helps us see that perfect day. And then guess what? We can bring it back into the present and say, all right, these are the meals I know I need to reach. So if you've been struggling to hit your goals recently, look at that sample perfect day and reproduce it for a few days. Get bored of it because guess what's going to happen? One, you might not get bored of it. You might be like, this is actually really good. And I can just swap things in here or there. And it gives you stability. It takes your brain away from deciding what you need. It's just like your workout routine. Your workout routine isn't changing every day you do it. You just have the workout routine, you show up, you do it, you accomplish it, and then you get rewarded with the results that come. The diet can be the same way. We can keep it structured so that at least it gives us stability. And then we can open back up to a little more variety if we need that ability or that time to just kind of put a box around it, seal it up, contain it, and understand what we're doing one simple meal at a time, all planned out, kind of ready for us. Let's see. For me, if I prepare my own meals, I could eat more food and less calories since there's no oil in them. Yes, exactly. One of the biggest benefits. And that's a really good point, Milad, because there's another aspect of this too, is where what I was trying to do last night, I was trying to tweak the amount of calories without really adjusting the volume of food, right? And that's what made it a successful endeavor, I'd say, because now I have what seems to be the same meal as far as I know, as far as my taste buds know, and as far as my stomach knows. It's the same meal. It's just got slightly less ingredients. And it means I don't have to go to the grocery store as much. It means I don't have to order the acai powder as much. And it means that that's 71 or so other calories that aren't coming into my day. That's like going out and like getting all these extra steps in. So it's just like an easy little tweak that's just now going to have a compounding effect. And I'm just saying, the reason I'm so excited about this is because I've literally been eating like acai bowl like many times throughout the week for years now. So I mean, I'm just saying it's pretty cool to just know that's like one little thing that's going to compound and have these good effects. And chances are, when we look at our own diets and the foods we've eaten, we've probably been eating a lot of the same foods and food styles or ingredients for so much time. It's just like kind of how there's the fava bean tofu, the soy-free tofu out now. Let's just assume that you've been eating tofu for, years, and then you switch to the fava bean style, and it's immediately more protein and less calories. Like that will have a huge effect over time because everything kind of adds up. That's what's really, really cool about this. So this is another way for you guys to kind of identify where you've made really solid progress. And you have those days underneath your belt. So instead of just forgetting that you already had the perfect day figured out, let's go ahead and reproduce it. Then you'll be able to see, oh man, this stressful event threw me off. And that's what may push me a little bit higher. Oh, I had to take this car ride and I end up stopping at this store and I bought this thing that I know I shouldn't have had. So next time we'll be able to say like, okay, we know that that's the trigger of even going to this place or doing that. And it could really be helpful because these things add up over and over and over. So we're truly trying to figure out better ways to handle our actions and our responses to these different cues and different triggers. And this is another cool way of seeing whether you can just say for the next 7 days, show up, pull from the sample day so you know exactly how to make every day perfect for you as best as you can. And then you realize as a secondary point that you get, if the day is thrown off, then you get to see exactly why. It's not muddled by anything else because you have this daily plan that you're aiming to reach and hit. So you can identify the stressor or the thing that made you kind of fall off the plan, and then you could approach it better the next time. It gives you more data to work with. So I hope this was really, really helpful and really fun for you guys. Hopefully you can take a look at that day where, it's not too far ago. It's not like it was 3 months ago. Hopefully it was like a week or two ago, right? Hopefully it could have been yesterday. It could be today, but it's like I did everything right. All right. What's entailed for this? I know I got a meal prep. I got to have my tempeh ready. All right. I know I got to have my lentils. Oh, I don't have any lentils ready. I know I need to be ready at the store. Okay, that's my weak link. I don't stay stocked up with lentils. Let me go ahead and buy 3 bags at once instead of the one. I know it's a staple. I love this meal. Right. So being prepared, buying food in bulk, right? I love that. I do that with my nutritional yeast. When there's buy one, get one frees at the local Publix here. My tofu, I just bought like 6 of my tofus. So that was super great. The fava bean tofu was on sale. You know, um, Bit the big bags of acai powder, and that just keeps it in stock, right? Because what happens if we run out of stuff? I've been there. I'm there a couple times a month where I open the cabinet. I'm like, "Oh, I don't have any beans. And now I literally got to run to the store to go get beans for one ingredient. Guess what that does? It makes me want to go get something quick, something fast if I'm not ready, right? And we all live in that world, right? Oh, time to go to Chipotle now. Time to go to the bowl place. I don't have anything ready. I'm stressed. I just need to eat. Can't think about what to make. I don't want to sit here and cook. It's normal. It's human stuff. But this gets to show you, do a little practices like this, a little homework, little investigative reporting into what we're doing, on our own of how we can do this stuff. Yeah. Milad, you said, yep, chips and hummus when I'm not prepared. Yeah, exactly. And then also it's being prepared in the way of not even buying the chips, right? In the first place, so that if you have hummus, you've got to eat them with maybe something healthy, like some air fried tofu or some roasted red peppers that are cut up, right? So that's one of the moves is making sure you're stocked with the things you actually want to eat that are good for your plan and not picking up the things that aren't supposed to be on the plan. And again, that's why having a plan is key, is key. And again, we're creating your plan, the thing that makes the most sense for you. And this is the next component to it is just diving a little bit deeper here into all the little ingredients and components and seeing which meals really work for us and doubling down on those. So, this was awesome, guys.